Hey everybody, welcome to another video. Today I'm gonna show you how I built this humongous wooden chest. It all started off as a very simple project, and eventually it evolved to a very complicated one, if I say so. It's basically a very large wooden box, but I wanted to do mitered corners. So I actually took two plywood sheets to make the four sides and part of another one to make the bottom and the top. Using my truck saw, I started off by cutting all the side walls. And because all the pieces are very long, I cut the miters with also using the track saw. I could have used the table saw, but pieces are just way too long. Because I'm gonna be using partitioners inside the chest to divide it up, I decided to put both side walls together so that I can route the grooves for the partitioners to come in and out. They're gonna be removable. To do this, I use the track saw for guidance, and with my handheld router, I just set the depth to 1/4 of an inch and started doing the grooves. I have to admit, this is not the best way to do it because if you don't do your best to keep it pushed against the fence, the router will get away from you. Once I did one, I moved on to do the other one, and then the other one, and the next one, and the next one, until I had 10 grooves done. And then all there was left was getting a little bit of a sandpaper and sanding each groove a little bit to remove all the tear out. Now, like I said, to make the box, I'll be using miter corners, but to do the bottom piece, I'll actually make rabbets on the bottom so I can inset the bottom piece. To do this, I installed a temporary sacrificial fence to my table saw so that I don't damage my permanent fence, and this way I can do the rabbets on the side. Here I'm just trying out a sample to make sure I get it right before I continue on to do the actual pieces. I labeled where I wanted the dados done, which is at the bottom of each piece, and then I went ahead and did each one. First I did the sides, and then I continued on to do the very long pieces, the side walls. For this I asked Giovanni to come and help me because they're too long. As you probably know, you're gonna see a lot of Giovanni on this one because it's very long, like very long, very difficult to maneuver all these long pieces. So I really appreciate your help, Giovanni. Thank you very much. Anyway, on this piece, as you can see right there, the dado part is already at the bottom, and after that, it was just a matter of sanding the inside because once I put the box together, it's gonna be very difficult to sand the inside. Now, when you're doing miter corners, it's very hard to apply clamping pressure, so make sure you get prepared. What I did, I cut 45-degree pieces, and using double-sided tape, I glued each one to each wall. This is gonna allow me to get clamping pressure without having too much difficulty, just like you're gonna see here. Now for this gluing part, I'm using Tybon 3 only because it gives me longer work time. It's kind of difficult to work with these such long pieces, so the longer of cure time that I can get, the better. And here you can see how I applied pressure with the clamps, and that's what I was talking about. And after the glue was dry, I removed them, and it was time to do the other side. Now the double-sided tape is pretty aggressive when you put it on there, so go easy on the double-sided tape. Don't put too much. You can see me here struggling to remove these. But as you can see in the video, I did not learn my lesson and I put the same amount to do the other side. And to do the other side, it was time to use more type on 3, request the help of Giovanni, and get to work. Now, one thing to consider that I had not taken into consideration, if you see me here, I'm putting a piece of scrap plywood in the middle because the pieces are so long that it was actually bowing at the middle part. And that's another issue I'm gonna have to resolve later on. This is only temporary. Oh, also, here's a cool little trick to close miter corners. And it turned out so well that I actually decided to a little dance. Ooh, 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 ooh. No, not really. Giovanni helped me put it down so I can continue on to the next part, which is adding corner splines. And this is just gonna reinforce the corners. Not that it needs it, but I wanna make sure that nothing's gonna happen in the future. And for this, I actually had to come up with a little jig to do the corner splines. The piece is just way too big to do it on the table saw. Otherwise, I would have done it if this was a normal small box, but it's not. So I have to create this jig. I'm just gonna let you watch it. It's a little bit of a self-explanatory. I did it pretty quickly. It's not pretty, but it worked. It worked really good. If you guys want me to do a separate video on this, let me know. And but I think you can see here pretty much what I'm doing. And once I start using it, you'll know how it works. It's pretty much a small sled with a stop at the top at the bottom, and with a spiral bit, you just go up and down without it moving, and you create the slot where you're gonna insert the splines. Again, it's pretty easy, but it worked. I was gonna say horrendously, but that's not the word. It worked great. That's the word. Yes, great. Once I cut the slots, I cut a bunch of Baltic birch 3/4 pieces, which are gonna act as splines. And they're not very visible in the end, really, but they're gonna serve its purpose. Again, this is just gonna create a ton of reinforcement. Research shows that miter corners with splines are one of the best joints there is. And so that's why I did it. Once I trimmed the excess, it was time to measure and cut the bottom piece so that I can glue it and install it. Again, the bottom is gonna be 3/4 birch, and this is where the slots are gonna come in handy because I'm just gonna cut it to length and width, and it's gonna drop in there perfectly, hopefully. And time for reality, and nice, it fits. Anyway, I have to take it out so that I can put glue, and I'm not gonna use screws or nails or anything. I'm just gonna use clamping pressure. This is gonna be strong enough. It's very tight in there. It's not gonna move or go anywhere. While I waited for the glue to dry, I actually turned the piece around and measured the top so that I could cut the lid for it. Now, I just cut it and prepared it and left it ready, but then again, I wanted to show you how much fun it is to cut 3/4 MDF. Now, you might ask, MDF? Why do you want MDF? Well, the partitioners, I'm gonna make them out of MDF. So I decided this was the perfect time to start cutting. Now, the first piece, the MDF was too long, so I cut it with a track saw. But then I went ahead and started cutting all the other ones with the table saw. Now, the partitioners are gonna serve a specific purpose for which you're gonna find out later. In the meantime, remember when I was gluing all the pieces together, that it was bowing up and down? Here's the solution I came up with. First, I started by choosing the very center partitioner and gluing it in place. Uh, I then get another piece of wood and put it on top, and I'm just gonna glue it together. I'm not gonna screw it or use nails or anything. I also cut a couple of little pieces of wood to cover the dados so it doesn't show and doesn't look ugly. And at first, I thought this was gonna solve my problem, but later I realized the other two sections are still too long and they actually bow up and down. Look at this. So I decided to choose the middle of those two, glue the partitioner MDF, and put another piece on top to give it strength and make sure it doesn't move any longer. I gotta admit, it's not the prettiest. It's not what my original design was, but it serves the same purpose. Um, so, you live and you learn. Once I was done with that problem, I made a little template to create the handles on the side. I know it's not the typical template. I'm gonna have the whole handheld router in there. Yep, the whole thing. And this is gonna give me a handle close to the size that I wanted. It's pretty big because the whole chest is very big. So this works just fine. And just because I'm showing you only on one side doesn't mean I only did it on one side. Everything I had to do it twice. And then after that, I rounded it over to make sure it's smooth on your little hands. And the middle partitioners, the pieces that I put to hold the MDF, I also rounded them over. And with the chisel, I removed the sharp corners so that my wife doesn't get cut on there or scratched. But I did that to all of them, so this worked out pretty good. Now, the chest, I didn't want it to just sit on the ground just without anything on the bottom. So I decided to raise it about 2.5 inches by building a small kick plate. This was very simple. I pretty much created a ladder. Yep, a ladder. Just brad nails, glue, and using a couple of scrap wood spacers, I just went ahead and glued them, put a couple of brad nails, which I later filled with wood filler. Um, and then to attach it to the chest itself, I used pocket holes, which you're never gonna see. Again, with Giovanni's help, I was able to turn it over in order to put the pocket holes on there. Oh man, every time I move this thing, I'm afraid Giovanni's gonna drop it. But he's a big boy now, so I know he doesn't drop it. And he keeps telling me, "Don't worry, Dad, I don't drop it." Man, it finally looks like I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Here I got this jig on Amazon to drill for the European style hinges, which served its purpose a little bit, but it's actually not very accurate. So I kind of had to figure out where the holes went in order to make sure I did the right holes. And using a Forstner bit, I did the holes and proceeded to install every single little hinge. Now, to open the lid, I wasn't sure what I was gonna do, so I used the same template that I did for the handles. And with the router, I just routed in a little niche where the fingies go to lift it up. And I think it turned out very well. As you can see here. There. Nothing fancy, but it works. It serves its purpose. Now, I did not round over the whole thing. I only did very little, less than 1/8 of an inch round over to the lid only to break up the corners before continuing on to sand everything by hand a little bit and with the sander. Once I sanded everything over, it was time to continue on to the finish. For the inside of the chest, I'm actually gonna be using Oris oil. And this is ignorance of me because I should have used linseed oil. But again, I'm learning. So that's why I appreciate your comments, guys. Leave me the comments. Tell me what I'm doing wrong so that I can do it right later. Anyway, it turned out fine. It was just a lot more work than I needed. And to the outside, I'm using Ruby Monocoat. This it's actually a good product, and it works because it's strong and it's what they use for wood floors, so it's very resistant and it's easy and quickly to apply. So it turned out good. Once I was done with the finish, I was getting ready to install the lid. Now I had the main holes drilled with the Forstner bit, so it was mainly putting the receiving piece inside the chest, uh, countersinking some holes. Well, not countersinking, pre-drilling some holes so that I don't know why. Why do people do this? Anyway, I did that and continued on with all of them before installing the European style hinges. Again, I'm learning a lot of things on this build. This is my first time installing European style hinges. Like I've said before, I'm learning this trade, so I'm not an expert. See what I'm doing and see if it works for you. If not, don't do it. Look somewhere else. But this time, it worked perfect. Look at that. Closing softly by itself. Gotta admit, it's pretty sweet watching it come together. And there's the finished piece. Well, not actually finished. I still have to remove the lid so that I can install the partitioners because otherwise they don't fit. But luckily, this type of hinges are very easily to clamp and unclamp. So it's very easy to remove and put back on, as you can see here. And it's ready to put it in its place. And its place is actually my wife's daycare. Again, this is another piece of furniture for my wife's daycare. It's to put little mattresses or whatever the little kids use to sleep on. But she needed 10 of them and it needed to fit in a specific place. So there you go. It's perfect. Huge chest. If someday she decides that she doesn't need it, it can be used for a ton of other things like throwing toys in there or storing blanket sheets or playing hide and seek or whatever you want to use it for. And if you made it to this far in the video, I would really appreciate if you guys subscribe to my channel. I'll be coming up with more builds, more things that I'm gonna learn. If you're gonna come and learn along with me, I really welcome you and I appreciate your subscription. Again, it doesn't cost you anything, but I really do appreciate it. Well, guys, and until the next time, we'll see ya.